Okay, welcome to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. We have a very big show today. We have State Senator Jessica Ramos will be here, a representative from Black Lives Matter, actually the founder in Greater New York. And finally, an individual here who's going to talk about the dangerous basements in New York City, certainly in Queens, and the flooding that has taken lives in the past as a result of Hurricane Ida. So as you can see, we have much to get to, so stay tuned. Today's verdict starts right now. Okay, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. We have with us today Annette Sicharan, coming from us from Queens, talking to us a little bit about Hurricane Ida and the 2-year anniversary and flooding. How you doing today, Annette?
Fine, thank you.
All right, so I was telling you off camera, I actually grew up in the area in Hollis Hills, not too far from Hollis, where all the a lot of flooding took place. And I grew up with a beautiful basement in Queens that, sometimes would get flooded. So tell me a little bit about, your organization and what you're looking to do as well.
Chaya Community Development Corporation is a housing and economic justice organization that is 23 years old, serving the South Asian and Indo-Caribbean community in New York City. But first and foremost, we are a community-based organization that serves anybody who needs our help. For over 15 years, we've been advocating for the legalization of basement apartments in New York City. We know that basement apartments have served as home for hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers for as long as these basements have existed. Yet many of them are considered unauthorized units, and that puts both the tenants as well as the homeowners in a precarious situation, right?
Who checks them out and makes sure that they're in code? Who would do that? The city, the state?
No, this is under the jurisdiction of the city. And so what I really want to emphasize here is that basement apartments serve as home, affordable homes where people can live in communities where they feel comfortable, where an extended family member may reside so they can be connected to family members. They have a purpose in New York City, especially these days with the affordable housing crisis, right? Yet the city has turned a blind eye. And often the way the city addresses the issues is by enforcement of fines, right? So many of these units are, most of them are safe and they're fine, right? But occasionally we hear of catastrophic situations like we did with Ida.
And what happened with Ida exactly?
So Ida was, as we all know, was an unfortunate and devastating storm that hit our area. 11 New Yorkers died in basement apartments. And it's the first time something like that has happened. And it really was a moment where the climate crisis and the housing crisis have sort of, intersected. And it has sort of brought to light and made it crystal clear that we can no longer kind of push the can down the road and ignore the issue of basement apartments because we're seeing flooding in unexpected places like we saw with Ida.
So how are you getting the word out? Like, what are you doing? Are you reaching out to your local council person? Are you talking to your state senator? How are you trying to get these, these new regulations in effect? How are you trying to do that?
Yeah, so let me tell you a little bit about the basement legalization campaign that is known as the BASE campaign, which Chaya has been leading with our partners, with many of our partners, like Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation, Pratt Center, and others. And so what we've been, for so long, we have watched tenants be unexpectedly displaced because the homeowner has gotten a fine of 10,000 or sometimes even upwards to 30,000. And there's a sort of vacate request. And so that not only displaces the tenant, but it also severely impacts the homeowner. Who rents out a basement apartment? Is often people who need the income, right? And so these are often vulnerable homeowners, right? And so we've been working for the last 15 years to draw attention to this issue, that if basement apartments truly serve as affordable homes that make sense for so many people, why do we not have a citywide program that sort of spells out in great detail to homeowners, what do I need to do to bring this apartment up to code to ensure that it is safe, right? Again, I want to underscore that many units are safe, but many are not, right? And also, how do we support homeowners to retrofit these units if they need to be retrofitted to?
Well, how do you, it could cost thousands and thousands of dollars
For sure.
to be able to retrofit or just to bring them up to code. Who pays for that?
Yeah, so what we are proposing is that New York City creates a program that funds homeowners in retrofitting their basement units, and that there is a agreement that the homeowner keeps the unit affordable for the long haul. And so we want to ensure that now this new swanky kind of up to code unit doesn't just bump up the property value and increases the taxes for the homeowners, but it also and create further gentrification of our neighborhoods, but that it actually stabilizes an affordable market. Really, at the core of our campaign is the affordability issue. We want to ensure that these hundreds of thousands of units that already serve as home, remain affordable, and are safe. And so that when the next flood happens, the next storm happens, that there are protections, right? There are adequate egresses so people can get out. We can't stop the climate crisis, right? We can't stop the next storm. How do we plan for it? How do we mitigate it? How do we keep New Yorkers safe?
All right, well, Annette, we're gonna have to leave it there. It's good stuff. We wish you luck with respect to the can you tell us where we can reach you if we need to reach out and maybe help out the organization?
Yes, absolutely. www.chaya, CHAYA, I just want to add that right now, the next step to this issue being solved in New York City is the state legislature taking action. And our focus has been to get the state legislature to support an adjustment to the state's multiple dwelling law that would allow New York City to move forward with this program. And so I want to appeal to listeners to reach out to your state legislator and request and ask to please address this issue and vote in favor of basement units in New York City. Thank you so much for having me.
We're gonna have to leave it there. Today's verdict has so much more coming up right after this.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff, like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
Okay, welcome back to today's verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. We have with us today a returning guest, State Senator Jessica Ramos. Senator, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's so good to see you. Great to be back. Greetings from Jackson Heights.
Did you have a nice summer?
Yes, although it was too short as usual.
Everyone's saying the same thing, including my son, a 13-year-old who's back to school. So getting into school, let's talk a little bit about teachers and the current situation with, how many we have, What are your thoughts in terms of the educational system right now in New York City?
Yeah, from Albany, a lot of our involvement in our children's education system is really about funding. From Albany, we fight for every single dime and nickel that children are owed. And for a long time, we've been fighting to fully fund the foundation aid formula. And actually, it was a big reason I ran for office back in 2018. And I'm very happy to say that we've delivered the past 2 years. So it's been very hurtful, particularly as a public school mom myself of two, to see that there are still school budget cuts going on. This year, we're welcoming 19,000 new migrant children into our school system. And well, when the classrooms have fewer resources than those that they need, and certainly at a time where we need more bilingual educators, these are really where we should be making these investments, in my opinion, and why I was so happy to see Governor Hochul sign 2 bills into law last week that are really going to make a difference.
Let's talk about those bills if we could. Let's get right to them.
Yeah, sure. So my bill was a workplace safety bill. So an unfortunate reality is, a lot of us parents don't have peace of mind necessarily every day, knowing that there are school shootings happening in other parts of the country. But I'm sure it's at the top of our mind as well. And this is why we felt it was necessary to correct a void in the education law that didn't allow for public schools to actually create a safety plan for their school. Private schools can, but public schools couldn't. And so what my bill did is allow public schools in New York now to create safety plans and empower principals to do so, knowing that and trusting that they know their school and they know their school community the best.
Who puts the plan into effect? I mean, is it the security guard that's waiting to let the kids in the morning, or is it the principal? How does that work?
So the bill does not design a plan. The bill empowers principals to create a plan and work with their faculty to create a plan that works for their school. So those details will be figured out by every single school.
Okay, which has been on everybody's mind because of the school shootings. It's understandable that you'd want some type of plan, and you're right. Private schools have had it for years.
It's true. And here in New York, we have very stringent, gun laws, right? The red flag laws, and there's all sorts of, background checks that are required. Thankfully, here in New York, we've done the right thing. But the fact is, we don't know what might happen, right? We have seen acts of hate happen in upstate New York and Buffalo, and no one is immune to these tragedies. And this is why we have to empower our school guardians to know what to do, to have a plan, and to be able to enact that plan.
Very important. Let's talk about that second bill if we could.
Yeah, the second bill that was signed into law by Governor Hochul is one that was passed by Senator John Liu, my neighbor here in Queens. And I was very proud to vote for it because it's actually going to create a brand new 2-year residency program for new teachers. So remember, I just mentioned that we're welcoming 19,000 new migrant children to the New York City public school system, which is wonderful, but it means that we need more bilingual teachers, right? And for a long time, we've known that we need more Black teachers, more brown teachers, meaning Latino and South Asian. We need more Asian teachers. We want teachers in the classroom to reflect the students who are learning in that classroom. And so, of course, many times these professionals end up lured by much more moneyed careers. But there's a lot of value, of course, in teaching our children. And as we continue to fight for better pay for our teachers, we certainly want to make sure that there is a program that is actively aiming to diversify that pool of teachers here in New York City so that it looks just like New York City kids.
How does the residency program work? Do you have to live within a certain area of the city to be able to be called as a teacher? Is that what it is?
So remember, this is New York State law. It's for the
Okay.
entire state. I believe the residency requirements will have to match the school district that you're seeking employment in. Here in New York City, certainly, I believe you have to be a New York State resident. I
Sure.
don't think that you have to, I'm not sure that you have to be a New York City resident in order to teach in New York City public schools. I have a vague recollection of a Long Islander or two that might be teaching in here in Queens. But certainly diversifying that pool and making sure, by the way, I mean, we talk about diversity in terms of ethnicity, but it's also about attracting more men. Right? We want more male teachers. We want our sons, and I say that as a boy mom. I have 10 and 12-year-old boys. We want them to be able to see great male role models, also as their teachers in classrooms.
Let me ask you a question, because I grew up in the public school system of Queens myself in District 26. I remember you never had more than 28 to 30 kids in a classroom. Is there a change to that, or are we seeing more kids in the classroom because of the migrant crisis, or is it the same?
So proud District 30 kid here. I grew up with 30, 35 kids in my classroom. And you know, I guess we made it through. I turned out okay, right? So far, so good. But we do want much more individualized attention. And I think that that is particularly important as we're crawling out of the pandemic. Look, here in my district, we were the epicenter of the epicenter. And I actually have a handful of children who lost a parent to COVID, or both even, sadly. So we do want to make sure that they have as many supports as they can inside and outside of the classroom. The school obviously plays a huge role in that. There has been, over the past few years, a great effort to reduce the number of students required in a classroom in order to force that individualized attention. It has not passed yet. I think the opposing team points to resources, right? Obviously, we would need more classrooms and what that would look like. But truly, I believe that that's where our aim should be, so that teachers aren't overwhelmed either, because they do work very, very hard and have a lot of patience with our little ones as they're developing.
All right, well, I want to thank you very much. We're going to have to leave it there. State Senator Jessica Ramos, hopefully you come back, give us a little bit of an update on the school system if you could in the next couple of months.
Absolutely. I'm happy to come back anytime you'd like. It's always great talking with you, David.
All right, stay with us. Today's Verdict has so much more right after this.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Can you see anything different as a pill?
No.
You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl, it's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know.
All right, welcome back to today's Verdict. I'm your host and trial attorney, David Lesh. We have a returning guest with us. Shavona Newsom from Black Lives Greater New York is back. Black Lives Matter. How you doing, Shavona? Nice to see you.
It's always a pleasure to be back. I'm doing well.
We were just talking about how the summer goes so fast, and now it's back to school and everyone's back to work. It's
That's right. But it seems like when you have these injustices, it's never really a summer. You're just not protesting in 0-degree weather.
So let's get right into it. Policing policies, and there's been a little bit of a change now in what the police can and will do when there's any type of protest, right? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Well, on the four-tier policy, it's amazing in theory. What people need to know what we do at Black Lives Matter Greater New York is, yes, you see us protesting on the street, but with working with Governor Andrew Cuomo, we passed the Say Her Name Act. We actually fought to give Letitia James the right to bring in independent prosecutors in case of the police brutality. But in theory, it's amazing. But I was protesting on Friday in the death of Eric Dupre, who was murdered by the cooler killer when an officer took a 40-pound cooler and slammed it against his head. The way that the new procedure goes, and I'm assuming it was supposed to take effect prior to me protesting on Friday, I can wholeheartedly say that the NYPD is currently violating the tiers. The way that the tiers are working and the way that this new system is in place is to ensure that New Yorkers are able to exercise their constitutional rights, freedom of speech, democracy. You're supposed to have a protest liaison. That's the little guys you see in like the blue polos. They're supposed to ensure your protest route. They're supposed not supposed to dispatch SRG, what people don't know, which was created after 9/11 to fight terrorism. They're not supposed to use the tactics that we've seen during the George Floyd protest. We are not supposed to be treated like enemies of the state when we are protesting. And that, as of Friday, has not gone into effect yet. And what I truly fear is, yes, the laws are amazing. It sounds great. I would love for everyone to be out to come out and protest when something really touches their spirit. But as we've seen, no charges have been filed against the officers who committed police brutality in 2020. As we've seen with the CCRB, which is like our complaint bureau here for your viewers, it has no real teeth. So yes, the NYPD is actually going to get more money from this. There are no people who have been affected by protesting or police brutality during the George Floyd movement who are sitting on this council. So unfortunately, it's just a well-written document right now.
Well, let me ask you a question. There are 4 different tiers, right? We have tier 1, which is really more of a peaceful, if there's a peaceful protest, they just accommodate peaceful protests. They just pass through the streets. Are you fine with that particular tier?
I am fine with the document itself, but as someone who's out on the ground and everyone knows about it, that's why we're sitting here talking about it. I do not believe that the NYPD will enforce this. So having such a high profile and being a leader, that makes me and my counterpart, Hawk Newsom, that makes us targets. So under the new peaceful protest laws, we should have been allowed this past Friday to peacefully protest, to occupy space, to take up the streets. If any of your viewers know Grand Central, if you come out not too far from Cipriani's by the Hyatt to the corner of 42nd and Lexington, it's a half a block. That's how long we were allowed to protest. There was no one there to help us facilitate the protest. As it says in tier 1, SRG is never supposed to be dispatched. I think that's mentioned in about tier 3, they were on the scene immediately. They had shackles, which they're not supposed to carry anything that kind of looks like tactical gear, that kind of looks like they're going to war. And I just don't believe that the NYPD will enforce it. Now, say if this document was enforceable, it would be amazing. I have friends whose arms were broke. I've been beaten in the back by the 28th precinct with nightsticks. It would be an amazing form of protection, but I fear again that it has no real accountability. And the real accountability, something that would work, is if a police officer violates your right, if a police officer breaks the law, and we start seeing cops get locked up expeditiously, not in terms of losing vacation time or being suspended from the job when they are accused of murder, I think that that would make the NYPD and its 30,000 member gang, I think it would make them behave the way that everyday citizens go about their life. But let's be real, when we talk about crime and violence and all these things, it's only about 6% of our population who are the real quote unquote troublemakers.
The tier 3, you know, when there seems to be probable cause that an individual has committed a crime, do you see that during the protests, or does that just sound like something they say happens?
What happens with these protests, is they have targets. They understand that I am very loud. Some of our allies and comrades who we're ground on are very vocal. And yes, there is no fear of policing because we believe as Americans that this is our right and this is our duty. And it's the only way constitutionally, most times, that we can get justice. The police target folks. Say I was protesting the other day, small protest, the one I keep referring to. It was only about 20 or so folks. There was one man arrested, and that was my brother and my co-founder, Hawk Newsom, because he is a 6'5" lawyer who garners a lot of press and media attention. He was able to use his platform to fight for justice. So if these rules applied to everyone, and everyone was doing the exact same thing, marching, walking, yelling, holding their petition signs, why was there only one arrest? As you see in the tiers, it's supposed to be small offenses. I believe the little DAT sheet that he was given Friday night, I think it's like obstructing the street and disobeying a police order. Those were the charges that they took about 2 hours to come up with. But that's all in violation of this new policy. So let's see moving forward, will anything be done? I want to be optimistic because in the fight for social justice, you have to have a positive outlook. You have to believe that things are going to work. You have to believe that things happen for marginalized people when there is legislation. But I'm just not sure here in New York. It seems like the PBA is very strong and the politicians are very weak.
Where do you think we're heading? I mean, do you think we're in a situation where there are going to be less protests, more protests, or something else in terms of your group?
Absolutely not. There definitely going to be more protests. And I hate, well, I come from a finance background, right? So I always look at things in terms of numbers and trends and metrics. And the closer we get to, letting your viewers in on another little secret, the closer we get to the general election, meaning when we vote for president, Black lives become a huge issue. So say there may have been some cases that slipped through the radar or didn't garner a lot of media attention. There will be more coverage on police brutality. There will be more coverage on civil rights because we know about 90% of Black folks vote Democratic. So for Joe Biden, honestly, to get elected, we are going to see more of this in the news. And unfortunately, that makes my job very hard, but I'm up for the challenge. And I think that I would encourage everyone, if they see an injustice, if they see something happening, we get back to the foundation of America. The protesting and speaking out is the core of America. The Boston Tea Party was not a party. Anything that we ever accomplished as a nation, it took people taking to the streets and saying no more. So as long as injustice happens, as long as we have police officers who are allowed to harm us with impunity, I hope more and more people come out. I hope that you come out, David, be one of our legal observers.
All right, Siobhan, I want to thank you very much for coming back. Hopefully we'll see you soon. You know, we'd love to have an update for you in the next couple of months, if that's possible.
Let's do it. I'm always available for you guys. I appreciate you and give my best to the whole team.
All right, we have so much more coming up. Stay with us. Today's Verdict comes back right after this. Well, that's all we have for today. I'd like to thank our three guests for joining us, and of course, you, the viewers, for watching. If you have an issue or a topic that you'd like to see on a future edition of Today's Verdict, feel free to email me at davidlesh@bronxnet.org. Remember, in 2 weeks, we'll have another new show for you, so stay with us. See you in 2 weeks.